It's great. It's really getting in there.
So we got the fan series, and we have a legend amongst us here, a tailgate legend, a Jets fan legend, Mr. Joe Grinwis, the Panda. What's up, man?
What's going on? How are you?
So wait, the question is, how did the name Panda originate? Because everybody knows you by Panda. How did that originate?
It originated like over a dozen years ago when I was up in Boston visiting a friend. It was actually the night before a Jets-Patriots game, and we were at a bar, and there was this older woman, and she was kind of like coming on to me, and he, in a drunken stupor, said, "That's not a cougar, that's a panda." Now, what happened after that was I made a Twitter account, and I was joking with him, what should my name be? And he said, Fear the Panda. So I said, okay, Fear the Panda. And I made Fear the Panda. And then when 2010 came around and we had to form a new tailgate because of the old stadium coming down, I went on Twitter and tried to find misplaced Jets fans to join the tailgate, anyone who was looking for a tailgate that might have lost some of their buddies because of the PSLs. And everyone just started calling me Panda at that point when they met up in the parking lot. It just kind of stuck, and that's been it from there.
So then what made you a Jets fan to start out with?
Well, my dad was a Eagles fan, and my mom was a Giants fan, so it definitely wasn't from them. But my name is Joe, obviously, and my cousin, who, funnily, I have not seen since I was 1 year old, and he's still alive, but he bought me a Joe Namath bib and
Nice.
a Joe Namath doll. So I feel like that had a role in it, but it really started when I was 5 and I saw a game on TV and they were playing the Giants and I saw their helmets and I went against my mom and that made my dad happy. So it kind of just, it went from there and it just kind of never stopped and I didn't know any better and here I am.
That's awesome. Kev, you can go, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what were some of your like most memorable early moments as a fan of the team?
Definitely 1995 and 96 were memorable in a bad way, but also in a good way. They were my first 2 years as a season ticket holder. My dad got season tickets in 95 when my mom was about to pass from cancer because he worked 6 days a week and we didn't spend a lot of time together. So it was a good way for us to get closer and spend time together and have a good father-son relationship because while he was an Eagles fan, he loved the game of football and he was fine rooting for the Jets because they didn't ever really play the Eagles outside of once every few years. So those first 2 years were a lot of fun, but the first vivid memory I have would be 97. My first time going to a game where they actually won because in 96 they didn't win anything.
The coach
Just talking about that last night.
Yeah, and in 95 they only won once, and unfortunately that was one of 2 games in 95 that I did not attend. So 97 was the first time I saw a home win, and that was against Oakland. And I'll never forget Otis Smith and Ray Mickens, the combination of the two, blocking a field goal towards the end of regulation. Mickens picked it up and brought it back into our end zone, and the stadium went insane. I mean, we had just beaten Seattle week 1. Then we had lost week 2 against the Colts, I believe was the home opener.
Yep.
And then we played the Raiders, and that game, just the electricity of the crowd and just being the first home win that I saw in person, I'll never forget that moment.
Yeah, it's funny, dude.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
I was gonna say it's funny because like you and I have like very similar stories about our childhoods and how our dads kind of got us into the game. My dad's very similar to yours. Worked 6 days, 6 nights a week, and those Sundays were just like so fucking awesome to just be able to go there and get kind of lost in the the atmosphere of the crowd and everything. It's just so different from what it is now, and just looking back, it's just fucking awesome to think about. I wish we could have that again, but
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think that's ever coming back. The stadium, Giant Stadium, the Meadowlands, whatever you want to call it, that place was great. And it just a lot of the things have changed over time, but I'll always miss it and always cherish those memories because I had a lot of good memories from 95 to 2009.
Are there any other games that stick out in your mind as like any of the playoff runs or the championship games or anything like that sticks out in your mind?
Definitely. Obviously 98 was insane. I remember a lot of games that year, especially the Seattle game, and everybody in the stands, because replay was new at that time.
Yep.
And we were like, was he in? Was he
put
not?
The ball over. Yep.
Yeah, nobody knew. And then the Jacksonville game, it was funny. Well, not funny at the time, but now looking back on it, we got a flat tire on the way to the game. So my dad's freaking out. We're on Route 3, and he had to call a buddy of his to help him because he wasn't really good at changing tires. Neither am I, for that matter. But eventually we got it fixed. We got to the stadium around, I think it was around 11:30, and you couldn't park anywhere at the stadium, so we had to park by the Continental Airlines and then walk over that bridge. And
Cattle
we got
walk.
into it was rough. And then we got in the seats. The game was great, obviously. And on the way back, just the hysteria in the tunnel was intense. Outside of that, I remember 2002 very well, beating the Packers. We're all huddled up watching little TVs that you could see from the last few rows of the lower level, and didn't think while we were tailgating that we ever were going to have a chance to win that game and win the division. But then once, what happened in New England happened, the whole game was a party, and the Jets came out and played great. Other game I really remember a lot, not many people I don't think do, but the 2004 game against Houston when Pennington came back after missing 3 games, that is a pretty memorable game to me. I'm not exactly sure why, other than I remember just being excited Chad was back, because at the time, that was the first time I really ever felt that we had a franchise quarterback, even though it turned out we didn't due to injuries and other issues. But when he came back and he had this great sneak right in front of my seats, and he got up and he was flexing his arm, and the whole crowd went nuts. And so that was a great one. And then of course, as time moves on, I remember the 2009 season. That was pretty special, beating New England week 2, and Cincinnati week 17 to close out the stadium was special as well.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of really. We always tend to dwell on all the negativity because we always have all those stories about they screwed this one up and they blew this. But there's a lot of really cool memories too that we have that kind of get lost in all of our nonsense, which is pretty wild. Joe, who are some of your favorite players? All-time favorite players?
All time, I'd say for number 1, it would be a tie between Curtis Martin and Wayne Corbett. I know that's kind of the status quo answer for a lot of guys my age and stuff, but growing up, they were great and fun to watch. If I had to pick one or the other, I would say Wayne. He was just spectacular to watch. I can't remember more than twice of him ever dropping a pass. Yeah. He always gave his heart and soul out there. So I would say Wayne Corbett and Curtis Martin are definitely 1 and 2. After that, I kind of always liked some of the random guys that people didn't really were huge fans of. I was a big fan of John McGraw, who I know was not a big success here. But I think like Pennington, although he never played as well as Pennington did offensively, but like Pennington in a way, if he had stayed healthy, I think he would have had a better career at safety. Yep. I really love Santana Moss. I thought he brought a lot to the table. I was unhappy to see him go to Washington. Sean Ellis, he was a great player, sturdy, dependable. Obviously, Mangold, Ferguson, guys like that. Currently, Henry Anderson, big Henry Anderson fan.
For one more year.
He had a down year last year, but I think he's coming back this year. I think he's coming back. And another guy that I really liked was Mike Nugent. I thought he was going to be a good kicker, but he didn't turn out. He didn't turn out that way. He didn't turn out that way. But I was a Nugent supporter as
I never forget him yelling out Nuge. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
I honestly thought he would be a good kicker after what he did at Ohio State, but of course he didn't.
Yeah, Kev, you can go.
I was going to ask, do you have any memories from going back to Hofstra?
I never really went out to Hofstra. My dad and I never really went out to training camp out there. I went one time, and it wasn't really that memorable. No players signed that day. I guess it was probably an off day because I know the whole thing is that Hofstra was very fan-friendly.
Yeah.
So I must have been there on the wrong day.
Well, Kev, you got to ask him about – you got to talking about Cortland, dude. Cortland's where he became a hero.
I never went to Cortland,
No, but Joe made history in Cortland. Tell your story, man.
Well, it was Cortland. I went up there all the years that they were with Rex. I would go every year from Thursday. Camp would start Friday. I'll go every year from Thursday to Monday. And it was 2012, I believe. And we were out drinking at a bar, the Dark Horse in Cortland. And I was with my friend Joe Hart, who tailgates with us at L7 as well. And we were drinking for like 6, 7, 8, 9 hours and stumbling around town. And we run into Dennis Thurman. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty interesting. I wonder if Rex is with him. So we kind of like follow him without him kind of knowing type of deal. Right. And we run into Rex. And we run into Rex in the street corner. And there I am wearing a "This Team Makes Me Drink" shirt. Rex looks down, and I'm thinking, this is the worst time for me to be wearing this shirt. Usually I'm just wearing a normal Jets t-shirt. I could get an autograph and a picture and go on my way. of course, this is the night that I choose to wear a shirt pretty much bad-mouthing the team. But he looked down at it, thought it was awesome, took a picture with me, invited us into the bar that we were standing outside of, and we went in the back. His bouncer, whoever, his protection, whatever they had with them, because they had a couple guys with them, took my cell phone, took Joe's cell phone. We went into a back room of the bar that we were in. I forget which one it was. And we did shots of tequila for about a half an hour straight, just bullshitting, talking football. I ended up posting the picture. An article was written by Christian Dyer, and it kind of exploded. I was on ESPN, CBS, ABC Nightly News. All because of this team makes me drink shirt with Rex, but he was very cool about it. And like I said, we were drinking and making jokes about it later on that night. I told him to play Tebow. He didn't.
Oh, so dude. And that's, see, the thing is, a little side note to this little thing we're doing here. We're all friends with Joe. We've known him a long time. I'll never forget when they got Tebow. This guy right here, he had the jersey. He had the fucking sticker on his car, dude. He had the Tebow sticker on his car.
Yeah, I met the guy. I went to training camp that year in Florham Park on my birthday. And I got a VIP pass from the Jets, and I was able to go on the field and meet him. He didn't throw me a pass, unfortunately. Probably wouldn't have hit me anyway. But it was very cool to meet him. He's a nice guy. Everything you read about, I mean, it was only a brief 5-minute conversation, but everything you read about the guy, he is genuine. And I honestly think he was a guy before his time. Maybe if he had a coach like John Harbaugh who worked around his skill set, maybe he would have been, not saying he would have been great, but maybe he would have won a few more games than he did. And I think, unfortunately, the Jet season kind of torpedoed any chance of him having a career.
See, I never had any issue with Tebow, the person or anything like that, but the fact that you brought him in as just like a side act and it just took away from, what Sanchez was trying to do here, I thought it was just way too much.
Well, they never should have done that. I mean, they should have cut bait. They couldn't have cut bait with Sanchez because they gave him a major extension. But they
negotiated with Manning.
Right, yeah. And they shouldn't have done both. And honestly, as soon as you saw Greg McElroy getting snaps over Tebow, you knew that he was never going to get a fair shot. It sucks because it destroyed not only Tebow's career, but it destroyed Sanchez's career too. Did. I think he had a really poor 2012. And his 2011, while I wasn't a big Sanchez fan, his 2011, he did start to throw the ball with better accuracy, I thought, even though his interception numbers went up through the roof. I thought his touchdown numbers also went through the roof, and his accuracy improved. And I thought he might have had a chance in 2012 if they didn't bring in the circus act and if they addressed the wide receiver position more, because if you remember in 2012, our wide receiver position was pretty much as bleak as it is now.
That's the transition I was looking for. Because you were saying that, as you were saying that, and that's why I'm glad you mentioned Sanchez, was like we had to build around them, offensive line, give them playmakers. Fast forward to, Sam Darnold, and we're having the same kind of problem now where it's like offensive line, they added a bunch of guys back then, a bunch of journeymen. The wide receiver position is kind of like what is it? So tell us what your thoughts are on the offense, Joe.
I mean, I was not a huge fan of Becton. I had him rated as my 5th best tackle in the draft, but I'm no draft expert. So for all I know, he's the next Jonathan Ogden, and I'm pulling for him. Outside of that, yeah, like you said, a lot of journeyman interior offensive linemen. There's nobody there to get excited about. There's not a Marshall Yonda in the group or something like that. It's a bunch of guys who have started, a few games here and there or even seasons in some instance, but nobody who's a perennial all-pro or Pro Bowl type player. And at right tackle, I think it's a huge question mark whether you go with Adoga or Fant. Adoga struggled last year, and Fant struggles to stay on the field. And when he is on the field, he isn't exactly Jonathan Ogden himself. He struggles as well. So not only that, but the fact that the line is going to have at least 3, if not all 5 new starters, especially in an offseason like this, I worry for Sam's protection. Yes, we might have an upgrade at all 5 positions or most of the 5 positions, slight to a lot better in some instances, but it takes time to gel. I don't remember exactly what season it was, but I remember in the mid-2000s, there was a season where the Jets had 4 new offensive linemen, and it took them until about week 6 or week 7 to really get in sync. And that's when you had 2-a-day off-season training camps, and that's when you had a normal off-season. Now they practice for an hour and a half every other day and call it a day, and they don't have a real off-season this off-season. So to see the line gel, that's going to be a problem. Running back, I think we're okay. I love Le'Veon. I think he's misused.
Can we like, what the fuck are we doing with Devontae Freeman? First of all, I'd rather have Devontae Freeman over Frank Gore, but you could almost see them sign Devontae Freeman, have Frank Gore, and guess what? They trade Le'Veon Bell. Or like it's just what are we doing here? Like, why not get a fucking backup quarterback? Why not get more receivers? Like,
Well,
what are
that
we
would
doing
be
with
nice.
running? Like, well, I don't. Sorry, I had to go my little rant here, but what are we doing with
No,
Vontae
it's
Freeman now? Like, the Frank Gore thing makes no sense to me. It never made sense to me. I don't give a shit about character and with all this other shit. But okay, Joe.
no.
Sorry.
No. I hear you, man. I'm the same way. I never understood the Frank Gore signing. I still don't get it because you know what's going to happen. We all know what's going to happen. He's going to get 150 touches throughout the season, possibly more. Bell's going to be neglected to a guy who touches the ball 10 to 15 times a game, and if they can, they'll probably trade him in mid-October.
Yep.
And if they sign a guy like Freeman, I think that definitely is even – the writing hasn't been on the wall already. That will put it on the wall and cement it on the wall. Because you drafted Perrine and, you know, you signed Gore, and if you sign Freeman, what the heck are you going to do with Bell? So I think they're definitely looking to get rid of him. And it's a shame because I don't think the guy is cooked. I don't think he sat out a year and he lost it. I really don't. I think he just – you know, how many times – it's so friggin' frustrating last year to see him every 1st and 10, up the middle. 2nd and 9, up the middle, especially with an interior line that sucks, and that's not his running style. The guy ran behind a fullback in Pittsburgh. Can we sign a fullback? I know there's not many out there, but it is possible to go after one. It is possible to sign someone. Yeah, play Panda. Bring back
No, he's going to be the tight end.
Yeah, bring back Wayne Hunter and let him do it. Or who's the guy, 63 is eligible, Jason Smith. Bring him back. Let him be friggin' the fullback because it just doesn't make sense to me. I know Gase, you know, has his own power trip and stuff like that, but you've got a top 5 running back in the league in Le'Veon Bell, and you don't even try to use him effectively. It's so frustrating.
The Le'Veon Bell thing probably bothers me more than anything else because as a fan base, we've been talking about not having offensive playmakers for about 2 decades now, you know, trying to replace Curtis Martin. You know, who have we really had? You know, we've had Santonio for a little bit, Braylon for a little bit, and neither of those guys are real number ones. And we finally have a guy in his prime that's one of the best running backs in the league, and we have a head coach that can't use him the right way.
That's the same thing with wide receiver too, though. I mean, you finally get a guy who gets rapport with the franchise quarterback and Robbie. Let's say what you want about Robbie. No, he's not a number 1 wide receiver. Yes, he could have, you know, ran some routes better, but he did improve on his route running, I thought, last year.
Yep.
I thought that was the most improvement I saw from him during his tenure. And his rapport with Sam was second to none. I mean, yes, Sam had some rapport with Herndon, but in his rookie year, but he also missed last year. And you don't know how that's going to work in this offense. And, yeah, he had some rapport with Crowder as well, but nobody more than Robbie. And now you take him away, and you don't replace him with somebody with proven talent. You replace him with a guy who had 3 good games at the tail end of last year when Jameis Winston was just chucking YOLO bombs 60 times a game. Well, yeah, anybody's going to come down with a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. Anyone's going to come down with a few passes. The guy's been on 4 teams in 5 years, and nobody wants him. You know why? Because he sucks. He's not any good. He's a good number 4 receiver at best. He's a one-trick pony who you can bring in, have 2 good games a year, and then he's just going to disappear into the darkness.
Yeah, I mean, listen, after that, it's like, what do you think about having – so you have Crowder, we all like, I think. Perryman, to me, I'll say he's mediocre. But what do you think about – you have Mims, you have Josh Doxson, you have Berrios, and is that enough, or do the Jets need to do more before training camp?
They need to do more, but I'm not really sure how they can do it without trading away assets because there's nobody really out there in the free agent market that you really would want to bring in other than bringing back the corpse of Demaryius Thomas. But I don't really know how much that's going to do. You already have a guy who can't stay on the field in Josh Doxson. Another one in Perriman in some ways. He did spend a lot of his time in Baltimore on the sideline and Cleveland as well. I like Mims a lot. He was my 4th or 5th favorite. He was a top 5 receiver for me in the draft. I really liked him. I was shocked that he was there. I was pissed when the Jets traded down. I didn't think he would be there at 69 or wherever it was that they ended up getting him. I can't remember the exact number. But we did, and I'm glad we did. And I think in the long haul, he's going to be a very good receiver for the team, but not this year. I mean, especially with this offseason, the way it is, and the fact that wide receivers normally take time to develop. They don't just step onto the field 9 times out of 10. I mean, yes, there are the rare exceptions, but 9 times out of 10, these guys don't step onto the field and all of a sudden they're Julio Jones. It's just, that's not how it goes. And, you know, especially a guy coming from Baylor, they didn't run a lot of routes. He didn't have a big route tree, so he's got to learn that as well.
Either. Nope.
Right. And the Big 12 Baylor, they don't press, they don't play defense, you know, and I'm not trying to say that because of that, he's not going to be a good receiver. His talent outweighs all of that, but it's going to take time, and it's not going to happen day one, especially when The guy across from you is Brashad Perriman. No one respects him. No one's going to respect him unless all of a sudden he turns into the next Devontae Parker, and I highly doubt that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing is like exactly everything you said. Does that put more pressure on Sam to play better or Adam Gase to coach better?
It should be both, but it's probably going to end up being Darnold to play better because everyone's going to say, look at the line. It was so improved. You got 6 new offensive linemen. You need to stand back there and make a throw. Yeah, well, that's great. You can be protected all day long, but if the guys aren't getting open, well, what are you supposed to do? If offensive line was everything, Dak Prescott would be a 4-time Super Bowl champion with the line that Dallas has. But the line isn't everything. Yes, it helps. Yes, it's important. And I understand all of that. But it's not everything. And you need guys who are going to get open. Thus why Dallas has guys traded for Amari Cooper and drafted CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
Because they know they need more than that. And I understand Rome wasn't built in one day. But the Jets could have done more. They had more salary cap. There were guys out there. They could have drafted another guy. I know that kind of conflicts what I just said about rookie receivers, but you could have at least had someone else in there.
Yep.
So you increase your chances of maybe finding a guy who comes in day one and produces, because Berrios isn't going to be that guy. Vincent Smith is not that guy. They're good role players who make, a few nice catches here and there, but they're not starting caliber receivers in the NFL, at least not for a team that's going to win anything.
Do you think any of it could be Douglas just being a little bit hesitant to pour long-term assets into Adam Gase if he does have questions about him as a long-term head coach?
I mean, I feel like they were kind of brought in together, but I mean, we'll never really know that because everything's hidden behind the scenes. But to me, it shouldn't be about Gase. It should be about Darnold. You should have faith in Darnold and even if you don't have faith in Darnold, and even if you are thinking about possibly replacing him in 2 years, you still need receivers for whoever you bring in. So whether it's faith in Darnold, faith in Gase, whomever, you need to get talent in there. This roster needs a bad influence of talent at wide receiver, because what they have right now is just not cutting it. And as much as everyone loves Crowder, and I do too, it's going to be really hard to get open when it's 8 or 9 in the box every time because no one's respecting what you're doing on the outside.
That's the biggest concern. It's like we keep saying it for months now. It's like you want building blocks for the future. Build around Sam and grow with Sam. Like who to block? It's like, and they don't. Now you got to hope it's Mims, but now it's like this year could be kind of like a wash year because he's going to learn and catch 45 passes maybe. That's 1 year down. And now you're into year 4 of Sam Darnold. It's just like.
And Perriman's on a 1-year deal too. So what are you going to do? Let him walk, and then let's bring in another guy. And it's just, you're wasting Sam Darnold's contract away. Now's the time to go out there and spend and trade for a wide receiver. I don't know who's available. I'm not an NFL GM, but these guys get paid millions of dollars to do it. They can freaking figure it out. Find out who's available and get a veteran in here. Spend the money now, because in 3 or 2 years, you're going to be giving Darnold $35 million a year, and you're not going to be able to afford many free agent receivers. Look at what's happened in Seattle. Their window closed. Yes, they're still playing and competitive every year, but they're not quite able to get over the hump. But they were when Wilson was quarterback, and if it wasn't for Pete Carroll, they would have won 2 championships. Instead, we're out there signing Brashad Perriman and Frank Gore.
Oh, dude, listen, and that's like you said, like you don't know who's available. I mean, like who would think going into this offseason that Hopkins would be gone and Diggs would be gone? Like 2 top-level receivers. Like, it's like nobody would have expected that.
You trade like the Cardinals guy. They traded David Johnson, who hasn't done anything in 3 years.
Yeah,
Great
sucks.
running back, but he hasn't done anything. David Johnson is a 2nd-round pick for whom I think is the best receiver in the league. And if you don't think he's the best, fine. He's the 2nd or 3rd. But he's a top 3, hands-down receiver in this league in DeAndre Hopkins. And I don't care that he wants a new contract. This is the time to give him the new contract. You don't have to pay anyone else but Jamal Adams and Sam Darnold.
Yep.
I would pay up Marcus May too, but it seems they're not going to go that route. But it doesn't matter. Now's the time to get someone like that. And a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, he can go in triple coverage and pull down a ball. He could teach Darnold so many things. Look at what he did for Deshaun Watson. It's just if you're going to get rid of Bell for no reason at the end of this year, and it seems they're going to, why not have just given him away for DeAndre Hopkins?
Yep. I mean, yeah, Kev.
Well, with Hopkins, I guess you can maybe make the argument. Maybe they didn't want to trade him to the AFC, kind of like Khalil Mack. They wanted to get him, over to the NFC with the Bears. But who was the other guy I wanted to mention? Stephon Diggs. Why not get him? Because you look at the Bills. They're setting up Josh Allen for success. He's got the offensive line. He's got the head coach. You can make an argument. You put Darnold over with Buffalo. They're one of the favorites in all of the AFC right now, I think.
If Darnold was on the Bills, I would probably say they were the 2nd or 3rd best team in the AFC. Obviously, Kansas City's won. After that, I mean, it could be anybody at this point. There's really nobody else that stands out in the AFC. Maybe Tennessee, but I kind of think their run was a fluke. So, yeah, if Darnold was in Buffalo, he'd have a much better shot. You're right. I mean, Diggs, and not only Diggs, but last year they signed John Brown and Cole Beasley. I mean, yes, we signed Jamison Crowder, but they got
Singletary's a
two
beast,
guys.
too.
We got one.
Yep.
Yeah, and they traded for Diggs. They did the smart thing. They're getting guys to help their quarterback. That's what they needed. They went into this offseason, and they needed one thing. They needed a number one wide receiver. Brown, I really like him, but he's a 2. Beasley, obviously, he's like Crowder. He's a slot. They needed a number 1, and now they have that. And as long as Allen stops throwing ground balls into the dirt when it matters, he's got a great shot. I mean, and he definitely did improve last year. And, Buffalo has done right by him. And I also think they have better coaching, too.
Yeah, much better.
No, I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like you look at it. And so now we covered the Jets offense. The defense, I think they did a lot of good things. They had to upgrade the secondary. They did that, not with flashy names, but veteran guys, proven guys. There's a lot more depth, which they needed desperately. You get back Poole, you get back Jenkins. What are your thoughts on the Jets defense, which should probably be better than last year, especially with Mosley coming back?
It should be. But my one concern is Greg Williams, and wherever he goes, usually in year 2 or year 3, things turn to shit. So, and why would I think that the New York Jets, one of the most dysfunctional organizations in the NFL, would be the place where that would change? I can't see that happening. But I'm praying it does, because you're right. They definitely could be a lot better this year, and that's saying something because they played very well last year. Now, granted, down the stretch, some of their statistics in play was kind of inflated by playing, 2 rookies making their second starts, Duck Hodges, Matt Barkley. The list goes on and on. But at the end of the day, you play, and if you got to play well. I mean, the Jets have been torched by Matt Barkley 2 years ago. So, they did a stand-up job, and they stopped him and won that game and other games. I really like the addition of Pierre Desir. I think he's an underrated cornerback. I think the Colts cut bait a little too early on him. I know he had a down year last year and had some injuries, but I actually really like him. I kind of wish we had him more for 1 year, because I have a feeling he's going to have a good year and get a good big contract somewhere else and walk. But I really like him. I like that they brought back Mollett, and obviously they still have Austin. Mosley coming back will be huge. It'll be interesting to see, though, what they do with Williamson, if he's going to end up being traded towards the end of training camp or in the middle of the season, or if he's just given his outright release once he's medically cleared to save money, since, the Jets are so cash-strapped apparently. But, I think the back end definitely improved with Desir, and some of and also Bryce Hall. I think he's going to be a pretty good corner out of Virginia. So I think those could be your 2 starting corners, unless Austin plays like he did towards the end of last year come week 1. I really think Bryce Hall could be starting week 1.
Yeah, I think the only major question mark you have right now on defense is what you're going to get from Zuniga opposite Jordan Jenkins, because everything else, I mean, it's pretty much coming back from last year. The number 1 ranked rushing defense. You have all those guys coming back. Hopefully you even get, a larger step from Quinnen Williams this year. You get CJ Mosley, which is going to be huge. Him and Jamal are 2 of the best defensive players in all of football, I think. And just all the bodies that you added at cornerback, you figure at least a couple of them, are going to be able to step up between Hall and Desir. I think that's definitely an upgrade over what we had last year.
Yeah, the only unfortunate thing is, again, we didn't really address outside linebacker as much as anybody would have liked, but that's just the Jets tradition going on 15 years now.
Yeah.
So, but I'm glad Jenkins is back, because he really is the young Calvin Pace. He's a great player against the run. He gets some sacks, he gets some pressure. There are games when he's, really disruptive, and there are games where he's not. But he's a guy that I would definitely keep for longer than 1 year, and hopefully they will give him a longer term extension. And yeah, Quinnen, I mean, we need a lot more from him. He did not impress me. I mean, I don't know what some people saw. Some people were like, "Oh, you gotta stop being so hard on him." All I saw from going to the games and seeing on TV is a guy come on the field for 2 snaps, get winded, and run off the field. I didn't really see him make any impact plays. I didn't see my boy Henry make many impact plays either. I think he could have a bounce back year this year. I think they need him to, because they just need somebody to at this point, because they need somebody to get in there when they're playing a good quarterback. Yes, you can use mirrors and all this Fugazi stuff against Duck Hodges and some of the mediocre quarterbacks in the league. But when you're going against Brady, although we don't do that anymore, Roethlisberger, Rivers, guys like that, they can get the ball out quick. They can get around whatever you're doing. And if you can't get in there and consistently disrupt them, they're going to hit the big play on you. And that's normally how we end up losing games.
And that's what we were sold on with Quinnen Williams when we drafted him, that, oh, you got to get that interior pressure. You got to get it right up the middle. That's how you stop Brady.
Yep.
So, I mean, if him and Henry Anderson can at least, step up and do a little bit more than they did last year, I think that definitely helps out the defense. You can, work around it, create some blitzes, have Jamal come in, things like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, because and that would be great because none of the elite quarterbacks in the AFC, outside of Mahomes, of course, are mobile. The top guys in the AFC after Mahomes are arguably Roethlisberger, Rivers. I can't say Brady anymore. That was going to be my next
Lamar
one.
Jackson.
I put Lamar Jackson in there. Yeah, I was just
Well,
gonna say, yeah. MVP last year.
MVP, that's great. And in 2 years, that guy's not going to be doing what he's doing now. Defensive coordinators will catch up. I'm not worried about Lamar Jackson. And if they face him in the playoffs, I'm sincerely not worried about Lamar Jackson because I don't think that he can beat a team in the playoffs. I really don't. And if we're a good enough team to play there, we'll be all right. But Rivers, Roethlisberger, those are the guys I'm worried about because I think the Steelers are going to be a heck of a team this year. And honestly, I think between the Chiefs and the Colts, those are going to be the two best teams in the AFC. I think a lot of people sleep on the Colts. Frank Reich is, in my opinion, one of the top 5 best coaches in the league. And if they weren't saddled with Jacoby Brissett after Andrew Luck's surprise retirement, I think it would have been Chiefs versus Colts in the AFC Championship game last year. And I'm not quite so sure the Chiefs would have won. Colts have a pretty stacked roster, and I think those are the guys you have to be worried about. So the up-the-middle pressure is definitely a concern. And even with Mahomes, too. I know he can make plays on the run, but if you can, flush him out of the pocket, sometimes he makes some dumb throws. Not a lot, but sometimes.
Would you look at a Jadeveon Clowney or Everson Griffin or anybody try to add to more pass rush, or or you just kind of stay status quo for now?
Everson Griffin, yes. If he were interested, Clowney, no. The only way I would do Clowney is if it was for a 1-year deal for around $10 million. I mean, it's not my money. I don't really care. But as long as it's a 1-year deal, I'm not giving him a 3, 4, 5-year deal where he's going to be here and get guaranteed money. The guy just doesn't perform on a consistent basis. He does tend to play better in the playoffs, but he's not consistent enough for me to rely on. And I just don't see it. The guy had Whitney Merciless and J.J. Watt across from him for 5 years in Houston and never had 10 sacks in a season. That makes no sense to me. If you're that good of a player, like he's been touted as, you would, because you would think that J.J. Watt would be getting double teamed. And Whitney Merciless, damn good pass rusher in his own right. Yep. So you would think that Jadeveon Clowney, Mr. number 1 overall pick, would be a little bit more productive than 1 year having 9 sacks, and the rest of that below 8.
Is there anybody else in free agency that you would look to target? Somebody like a Larry Warford or a Logan Ryan, somebody like that, especially when you have so many 1-year contracts right now and guys like Williamson and Brian Winters that are basically 1-year deals we can get out of, without any cap hits. Would you target anybody like that?
I like Warford, but I just don't think he fits the scheme. It seems that we want to run a zone scheme, and his big ass ain't running in a zone scheme. He's more of a ground and pound Rex Ryan style type of offensive guard. And in terms of Logan Ryan, I know Jets Twitter seems to think he's the second coming of Deion Sanders, but if we add him, great. If we don't, fine. I feel like he's more of a slot guy, or at least he was in Tennessee. And Brian Poole is one of the best slot corners in the league, at least in my opinion. So I don't really understand the fit there, because if you're going to sign Logan Ryan, you would either play him at nickelback or you play him at safety. Well, we know we don't need him at safety because we have the best safety tandem in the NFL. At least in my mind, we do. And we don't need him in nickelback because we have a top 5 nickelback. So where are you putting him? Are you putting him on the outside? Because if you put him on the outside, he was ranked only above 4 other corners as the worst outside cornerback in the league last year. So I don't think that would be a smart decision.
All right, so we talked about the whole team in general. What are your expectations, late May for this team going into the season? Do you think they're going to compete for the AFC East, or they're going to be kind of like a 7-8 win team? Like, what's your expectations for this team?
I want them to compete for the AFC East, but I don't see it. I think between the schedule being hard and the offensive line is going to take time gelling, the wide receiver concerns that I have, and the schedule again that we face, I just don't see how they're going to get off to a fast enough start, because the beginning of the schedule is actually not too bad. I mean, yes, you have San Francisco week 2, and Buffalo week 1 will be tough as well. But after that, you have the Colts, who, yes, they'll be very tough. Geez, every game is tough. But weeks 4 through after that Colts game, when you get to week 4 and you start playing the
After they're
Broncos
0-4, they're going to be fine.
yeah. But when you get to week 4 and you play Denver and then you play Miami and all these other teams in the middle of the schedule, it's really not that
baby.
tough. Yeah, God, it's really not that of a tough schedule in the middle. But I don't see it happening. I think they're more of like a 5 or 6 win team. I just can't see them going into Kansas City and winning. I can't see them going into Miami and winning because we never do. I can't see them going into a lot of the road games and winning, actually. And in terms of the home schedule, it's a rough slate. I mean, San Francisco, yeah, it's a West Coast trip in that first home game, but as much as Jimmy Garoppolo is not that great, the rest of the team is, and the Jets historically have struggled with San Francisco.
So if they win,
yeah.
but so if they say, if your expectation is they win 5 or 6 games based on the schedule, the changes in offensive line, everything else, does Adam Gase keep his job then? Is that enough for him to keep his job?
I think it is, only because I don't want him back.
Told you,
I think he should go. I unfortunately stood on the table for him when we first got him because I thought, foolishly, like an idiot, that Stephen Ross and Mike Tenenbaum were the problems in Miami. That Tenenbaum torpedoed their salary cap, and that Stephen Ross is just as incompetent, and he is, of an owner as Woody Johnson and Christopher Johnson. But unfortunately, I was wrong, and you could see that pretty clearly that Gase is just a thick-headed asshole who's going to stick to his guns. But I think he's definitely going to be given a second year with Joe Douglas. I mean, Everyone uses last year between Douglas not coming on board until after the draft, Darnold getting mono, Simeon getting hurt, and everything else, all the other excuses, Mosley being out, all the other excuses that pile up and pile up.
Look at Kevin's face. Kevin's just demoralized now.
I think they're going to use that and give him 2021. I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see that. I thought they should have fired him at the end of last year, and I'm not one to call for a coach's firing after 1 year, but I think they're going to give him at least 2 years with Douglas, because if they don't, who's going to want to come in here?
I was curious to hear, how much of your expectations are tempered just because of Adam Gase, or is it more because of the roster and the schedule and things like that? Like, if the Jets had not even a great coach, this is the question I always ask, a guy like Herman Edwards, somebody like that, just, a middle-of-the-road coach who's proven he can get a good roster to the playoffs. If the Jets had somebody like that, what would your expectations be?
Herm was a little underrated. He was a good coach. You're right. It is partly because of Gase. Yeah, if it weren't for Gase and we did have a middle-of-the-line coach, I'd say we probably could win 8 or 9 games this year and be competitive for a wild card spot. But because of him and his stubbornness, and I think there are ways to get around the wide receiver issue. Not every week, because once you go against defenses with elite secondaries, you're screwed. But I think there are ways to get around it. I just don't think he's intelligent enough to do it.
No arguments here, man. I have kind of the same feeling where I think they're going to play okay enough to keep his job. Like, Darnold will show some flashes, they'll win 5 or 6 games, and all the built-in excuses justify him coming back next year. And like you said, this is kind of like their year one of their rebuild. Like, last year didn't count. Like, it's, you know what I mean? It's like that was
right.
This is like their true, like, these are our guys now. These are, and that gives him the transition to next year. And the next year's a make or break year for him, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. That's unfortunately that's what's going to happen, in my opinion. Unless somehow they just totally shit the bed and go 2-14, then maybe he's gone. But even then,
the thing that worries me about that, though, is if the blame then gets cast on Darnold, which I think is very possible that he would try to do that. Exactly. That you read all the clippings in the media, it seems like they're already starting to plant those seeds where if Darnold doesn't play well, they're not going to pick up the 50-year option, or, they're going to look to maybe draft their own quarterback next year, which I think would be a ridiculous mistake.
I would hope that if the media tries to spin it that way, I would hope that for once intelligence would prevail with this fan base, because, like it or not, the Jets do listen to the fans. Yep. They do pay attention. They are out there. We all know that. I know you guys know it. I know it too. They're listening. They're watching. They do things because of the fans. That's why Tebow was here, and other players throughout the years. So I would hope that the fans at that point would, continue to support Sam, unless he just has a god-awful season. But even then, he's the most hope we've had since Chad at a franchise quarterback. And even more than Mark, I think he just has more tools to work with to become that guy. and I hope that the fans won't turn on him, but you never know. And yeah, Gase is proven to run guys out of town. So we could be having Brock Osweiler as the starting quarterback in 2021, baby. Maybe even bring back Jay Cutler.
So then I guess the ultimate question for you is I get to ask this all the time, especially now with what's so quiet is, what is it like being a Jets fan, man? Somebody said, what is the life of a Jets fan? What is it for you, Mr. Panda?
Well, I can sum it up in a long way. I can sum it up in a short way. I'll start with the short way first. It's the highest of highs, immediately followed by the lowest of lows. Every single time. Every single time they play well and they're on a run and you think they're doing well, and then they go into Cincinnati and lose to Andy Dalton and score 6 points. Or they go into wherever and just get their asses handed to them by a shitty team that they have no business losing to. They've done it at home as well over the years. So I would say that would be the short answer. The long answer would be it's a lot of struggle. It's a lot of drinking, a lot of angry nights, a lot of not very happy nights, but the happy nights are very euphoric when they do come around. And I think this fan base is one of the most loyal in sports. I think they get a bad rap. Yeah, the fans haven't showed up in MetLife over the past 5-6 years as much as I would have liked or others would have liked to have seen. But I think the Jets fan base is very loyal. And if given something to root for, if given something that's consistently competitive, not winning, just competitive. They don't have to go 12-4 every year, but go 8-8, go 9-7, make the playoffs once a decade. You know, something like that. The fans would come back out and they would support this team. We've all been on road trips together when this team was good. Jets fans travel just as well. I'm not going to say as Steelers and Dolphins and Cowboys fans, but just as well as any second-tier fan base in terms of that way travels. We show up in droves, and when the team is good, the stadium has less visiting fans. The parking lot is packed early in the morning and ready to go. I think the fan base gets a bad rap, but we put up with a lot of shit. We put up with a lot of shit from ownership, a lot of shit from the team, and it's very frustrating at times, but when they win, it's very rewarding, and if they ever win the big one, it's going to be the most rewarding thing any of us could have ever had in our lives, other than probably, being a parent or something like that.
Very well said. Well, Kevin, you good?
Yeah.
Joe, thank you very much. That was phenomenal, dude. I could talk to you for hours. I think we do talk for hours, but thank you, man. We really appreciate it. And do you want anybody to follow you, man? You want to give out your information so people can follow you and talk some football with you?
Yeah, if anyone wants to follow me, it's at Panda NYJ on Twitter. And you can find me there, and we'll talk about the Jets. We'll talk about football in general, and that's really all I ever talk about. I don't really watch many other sports. So at Panda NYJ, follow me there.
So you created a new account in like 3 more weeks.
No. That is there's a whole story behind that. But I'm sure back to it's been Panda NYJ for the last couple of years, but I just changed the page.
Gotcha.
Thanks, Joe. We appreciate it, man.
Thank you.